Hi friends, this is Nishant. And as you all know that today, the investor community, the trader community, it has incurred a big loss. An ace investor and trader, legendary investor and trader, Shri Rakesh Jhunjhunwala has passed away. My deepest condolences with his family. And I pray to God that may he get Sadgati. Om Shanti. There is hardly any investor, any trader in India, in Indian stock market community, who hasn't taken inspiration from Rakesh Jhunjhunwala Saab. There is hardly anybody. In fact, he single-handedly is responsible for bringing many people in stock market. You know, especially in my generation, whenever somebody thinks of, or hears about stock market, the first thing he comes to know is either about Warren Buffett or about Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. These are the only, two names. Generally, I'm talking about the, when somebody gets into this for the first time. And he takes inspirations. So Rakesh Jhunjhunwala Saab, he basically proved that this can be done, which is a big thing, right? So he has, inspired many people to get into this business and sort of given them hope that yes, this is doable, especially to people of my generation. Now, of course, once one progresses on the path, then one may agree with his style, disagree with his style. That does not matter, right? I mean, your parents, they give you birth. After that, when you grow up, you agree with them or you don't agree with them, doesn't change the fact that they are your parents. Similarly, if somebody inspires you to get into some field, some domain, after that, let's say some musician inspired me to get into music. Now, once I get into music, even if I don't make or play music like that person who inspired me to get into music, that does not matter, right? Inspiration matters. So this is how Rakesh ji's memories will be with us. Now, I wanted to talk about something else as well. Those who know me, and this is a very controversial topic. Those who know me, they know that one of my, would I call it favorite? I think that's not the right word, but one of the most intriguing aspects that I think about is death. In fact, I personally feel that death is the fountainhead of all spirituality. In any person's life, I think there are only two aspects, which inspire him to get into spirituality. And those two things are sleep and death. Sleep is also a form of death, temporary death, because you don't know where you are, right? So the whole perception of who you are, where you are, what are your thoughts, your professional designations, everything goes away. So sleep and death. The moment one starts asking questions on these two aspects, and death is also something which is very enigmatic. Where do we go? What happens? Because, it's a spectrum, right? Life, death spectrum. So in this spectrum, life and death, they are quite away from each other. But our senses, our body allows us to only see the post-life and pre-death experience. But post-death and pre-birth, pre-life, we are not aware of that. But when we are not aware of something, does not mean it does not exist. Right? We all know how our senses, because we experience the world with our senses, right? So how our senses, we can see limited wavelength of, very, very limited light. We cannot see ultraviolet. We cannot see infrared. But lights exist, right? Even beyond this spectrum, beyond the visibility spectrum. Similarly, we can hear very, very limited sound range, but sounds exist even beyond that range. So our understanding of reality is limited to our sensory experience, which means that there are things beyond this. There are things beyond human experience. So once one has this kind of thought process, one knows that there is a big game. I mean, life and the biggest game, the biggest puzzle that human mankind, the biggest puzzle before human mankind or human species, the biggest puzzle before us is to figure this out, isn't it? I think all of the religion started to do that only. After that, it became institutionalized, and then we all know what happens. But be it yoga or meditation and all those things, the reason is this: to figure out this puzzle, the enigma, the mystery of life and death. Now, I was just going through, since, as I said, Rakesh ji passed away. People were saying things like, that the lesson is that health is very important. Yes, I agree. I'll come to that. That health is very important. He did not take care of his health, and so the lesson is that wealth is not everything. We should focus on health also. I agree. But what I'm trying to say here right now, what I'll be saying is little deeper. So I do not agree with this. I do not disagree with this. I do not disagree that health is important. I completely agree. But what I'm saying is, even if you are on top of your health, you will still die, right? The person who's making this video, me, and each and everyone who's listening to this video, each and everyone will die. Is there any exception? Right? There are no exceptions. So let's say he was healthy, 5 more years, right? 7, 8, 10 more years. Ultimately, death is the reality, the truth. So the biggest puzzle in front of us, entire collective mankind, is death itself, isn't it? That what is this whole game of life and death? I mean, we make so much money, and I mean, my point is that Rakesh ji died, he passed away, and people are like, the lesson is that we should focus on health. Well, Swami Vivekananda died at 39. He was suffering from several ailments. Would you have given the same gyan that he should have, that health, we should take care of health? Just a thought to ponder upon. So, see, many people in life, they are so engrossed in micros. I'll come to that. So there is a macro, there is a broad game that we are part of, the life and death game, big thing, spirituality, the big game. Within that big game, so in that big game we are, it's like a video game and we are like players. And ultimately the player dies, right? So everything that we assign meaning to in our life, how much money we have, or who we are, I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm a chartered accountant, I'm an MBA. I've done MBA from IIM. I'm not just an engineer, IIT. So everything, it all goes away, right? So it means that this is not the real game. It means it is not the real game. So we have to understand that the real game is life-death game. That what happens after we die, what goes out of our body that we die. And we have to understand that, there are situations when a small child, he starts speaking some other language. Or a small child, he starts playing some music instrument. So which means that there are some predispositions, which means that death is not the end, which means that there is something, it's a spectrum which we travel across, but since we do not carry our body throughout the journey, we don't remember things. We carry our body only in post-life, pre-death phase. So we only remember that part. But as I said, our senses are limited. So we are not, and that is why, the whole science of yoga, which aims at solving this puzzle, and this puzzle cannot be solved collectively, that, as an institution, it has to be solved individually by you only, yourself. And that is what we call enlightenment. That is what Buddha achieved. That you understand the whole game of life and death. Because see things like, otherwise the questions like, see, if you are an intelligent person in other spheres of life, like money, like profession, you're logical. If you are a logical person, then sometime or the other, you would get this question, who am I? Why me? Why people are dying? Why people die? Why death? If there is death, then what is the purpose of life? So if you are sensible, if you are logical, then you are bound to ask these questions. And when you ask these questions, then you get into this whole spirituality thing, right? So this is the big game. This is the real game that is before us to figure out. So illusion, right? We see a dream. So it's in Ashtavakra Gita, this is how it started. So Raja Janak, King Janak, he had a dream, right? I'll not go into that. I'll just say that if you have a dream, it feels real, right? You can see things, elaborate colors, things, everything, but your eyes are closed. So how are you seeing it? Which means that eyes are not the only faculty to see something. You are hearing things in your dream, which means that the ears are not the only faculty to hear things. Then the dream breaks, you wake up and you realize that it was a dream. So only after it breaks that you realize that it was a dream. But how do we know that what we call real is not a dream? Maybe one day, maybe death is that waking up. I'm just trying to put a spark of curiosity. What if the death is that waking up, that one day we will wake up and realize that this waking up was actually a big dream. But just because it is continuous, because our dreams are not continuous. We see something, then we wake up, it breaks. Next night, we might see something else. But then we wake up to this reality, but this reality continues, right? Next day as well, we are going to the same job, right? So that is why we call it reality, because it looks continuous. But since the dreams that we see, they look discontinuous, we call that dream. But who knows? So ultimately, it's a big game. We are part of that game. Death, as I said, is a fountainhead of all spirituality. When I was very young, I happened to attend some funerals, some cremations. I lost my father as well, So it pushes you in to ask certain questions. Most people, it's called Shamshan Vairagya. So as long as they are in the cremation ground, they are thinking about this. Many people don't even do that. Many people talk about cricket match. What's the score? Even in the cremation ground. So forget those people. I'm talking about sensible people. I'm talking about logical people. So logical people, when they would go to a cremation ground and the body is burning, the body is put on fire, they would at least ask that then what is the whole purpose? So when you ask this, death takes you to find answers, and then the doors of spirituality, they open up. So ultimately, it's a big game. We are part of a game. We are, as I said, a video game, and we are players. Virtual. Illusion. It's all an illusion, right? That is what is called Maya, no? Now, within this big game of life and death, we have made many sub-games, small, man-made games now. Life and death game is not man-made. So I'm making a clear distinction here. Life and death game is not man-made. Life and death game is something that we are part of, that we are part of this matrix. We didn't create it. But there are certain games that we created, within this life and death game. I'm sorry if I'm, if it's boring, but I'm just sharing my thoughts. Whether you like them or not is none of my business. I'm just using this platform, my channel, to convey my thoughts. So within this life-death game, we have created many sub-games like money game, profession game, power game, family game, relationship games, social game. Yeah, isn't it? So we have created these sub-games, and these are micro games, right? So the macro game is life-death puzzle. These are micro games, and in these micro games, if you think that people are so focused about these micro games, right? They are very focused about these micro games, like career game. So ultimately, please understand, one day your body will be put on fire. Ultimately, one day your body will be put on fire, or you will be buried, depending upon which religion, which family you were born in. So ultimately, one day that will happen. Then will it matter whether you are MBBS MD or not? So ultimately, we have to understand that all these different games, career games, money games, no matter how big you are in those games, it does not matter actually in the end. So we have created these sub games. These are micros of life. But what has happened is that rather than analyzing the micros of the macros, I'm sorry if it sounds confusing to you, but I'm saying rather than analyzing the macro game itself, the game of life and death, the puzzle of life and death, rather than that, we are engrossed too much into the micro games that we have created. I have to make this much money. I have to, relationship, my family, my kids, and society. Where am I in the society? My stature in the society, my career, my profession, power games. But these are temporary games. Ultimately, you have to understand. See, I'll tell you the thing. The thing is, if you are playing a video game and your player dies, please understand from this perspective. You are playing a video game and your player dies, at least you know that it's a player, right? You know it's just a game. But what if you are the player? And you have consciousness also. And you do not know that you are part of a game. This is what has happened to most of us, right? This is what has happened to most of us. We are in a game and we don't even realize that we are in a game. We have misunderstood this game as the real thing, whereas it is a game, because the litmus test of this is death. Because one day this will all be over, and if this is all going to be over, then it was never real in the first place. So today we are so obsessed about, let's say, I have to do this or that, or this degree, that degree, this much money, this deal went bad, that deal went wrong, he didn't pay me, all that. Ultimately, none of this is going to matter, which means that these games are as good as, so as long as they last, they are good. But this is not the real game. I hope now you are getting the perspective, because these are going to end. People who have won these games, so a rich man, very rich man, like today we talked about Rakesh ji, very rich man. He won the game of money, right? Sub game. As I said, humans made these games. So he won the game of money. There are people who win the game of power. They might not win the game of money. There are people who win the game of, a family game. So their relationships are amazing, right? They might not make money, big money. So there are different, kinds of people, and they sort of they sort of attain great heights in different kinds of games as per their tendencies, their nature. But my point is, no matter which game you win, no matter which game you become number one in, it's still a game. And it's still not the real game. The real game is life-death puzzle. So this is what I wanted to say. I'm not sure how many of you are actually connecting with me on this, but this is what I wanted to say, that when we say the lesson is that health is the priority, come on. Again, I'm saying, yes, I agree that one must take care of his health. I agree. But what I'm saying is that that is also a sub game, because ultimately the body also is part of the illusion, no? Even if you are a gym goer, you work out, you eat perfect diet, you will still die, no? That's what I'm saying. You will still die. So that is not, the real game is something else. Definitely, whatever time you live, you must live in a healthy way. I agree to that. But that's not the only lesson that we must take away from death. Anybody dies, that's not the only lesson. So there are people, as I said, who win the money game, a micro game. There are many millionaires and billionaires. So see, ultimately everybody is going to die, no? Ultimately a millionaire will die, a billionaire will die. I will die also, you will die also. Our parents, they will die. Our kids, they will die. This is the truth. No matter how bitter it is. This is the truth. So ultimately everybody will die. Healthy will die. Unhealthy will die. A fat guy will die. Somebody with 6 packs will die. A gym goer will die. A lazy person will die. A rich will die. A poor will die. So just that somebody didn't excel in the health game. Somebody did. Those who did will also die. What I'm trying to say here is that the big game, the macro game, is something else. So sensible people, logical people, and that macro game is not for everybody. Gyan Marg or yoga is not for everybody. There are, even in yoga, there are many people who get too obsessed with the physical part of it, the asan part of it. They remain in the asan part all their life. So they are health obsessed people. All their life they just keep on doing asan. They never get into the dharan dhyan samadhi stage. There are people who directly reach there. So Ramakrishna Paramhansa, he was not an asan guy, So he did not do acrobatics with his body. He was not a healthy person. But he was on to the last stage, samadhi, at his will. So different games. I just wanted to have a word with you on this. And I think every one of us must, at least sometime or the other in our busy schedules, must think about it. That what is the whole purpose of our existence? What is the whole game of life and death? Ultimately, why this whole circle? We have to understand that we are in a big game. Within that big game, we have created many, many small games. And we are too obsessed with our wins and losses in those small games that we completely forget that big game and we die one day. Just that. That's all. That's what I wanted to. I'm just sharing my thoughts. This is how I think. This is what I think. It's not about right or wrong. As I said, everybody has a different game, but I think the big game must be explored. All right. Thank you.